So I'll take a couple questions, and any thing I said that made you curious. Thanks. Okay. Question? So that's a really good question, and it's one that I wrestle with because I'd like all my colleagues to have the same access to the data that I have access to and that my team has access to. So you can come visit us and hang out with us as a visiting researcher like Jamie did last summer and have access to the same data we have access to. Some data sets are available. Twitter just had an announcement about making larger amounts of data available to researchers. Of course, Twitter is public, so you can get some of the data from Twitter feeds. Maybe Adam will have some comments about Facebook's data availability, since I have an expert next to me here. In the past, for the search log data, that's a little tricky because we make an agreement with users when they use our properties that we'll keep it private. However, we have had under contract large-scale sharing of data to large groups of academics who sign license agreements and come to workshops and work with the data that's been appropriately cleaned over time. But more and more data is becoming available to the academic community, including mobile phone data, properly anonymized and so on. I think technologies for anonymization will make it easier to share, and we're seeing those coming online now. So there's still lots of data out there that's available. Hospitals have lots of data. Sometimes it takes creative digging and working through agreements with folks. You have a comment about the Facebook data before you get started, Adam? I don't know if you have a comment. Okay.
So just to sort of summarize, because I too have gone 2 minutes over, the internet is real life. You know, people used to say IRL, you know, I'm a social psychologist, meaning in real life, I'm a social psychologist. This is what they'd say on the internet. They don't say that anymore. They say offline. There's online, offline, because the internet is real life, and the sorts of research questions we can ask about real life thus must necessarily also address real life as is expressed on the internet. And so from that perspective, I really do see big data and internet analysis as the necessary, well, a necessary future for social psychology in general. And you can ask questions for up to 2 minutes.
All right. I'm Jared Willis from UT Arlington. We know there are self-regulation resources and a decrease as the day goes on. So do people think twice less at nighttime versus in the morning or in the afternoon?
Don't know. Haven't looked at it. Good question. Good question. Yeah, I mean, cognitive resources in general sort of wear out. So I would expect that people would be, you know, probably they wouldn't think twice as much later as they get fatigued in some way. That would be my guess. It's a good question.
I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about the analysis where you were predicting whether people would post something or think twice. What went into that analysis, and what like exactly how did you do that, and what were some things that you thought might be contenders that weren't?
Well, I mean, that paper is a 20-minute talk on its own, right? The methodology there was that we looked at whether someone had begun typing of at least 5 characters. We don't look at the characters, we don't know what the characters are, we just sort of note that 5 characters have been entered. Then we look for a post over the course of the next 10 minutes. If a post is made, then they may or may not have thought twice. If a post is not made, then they clearly did think twice. And then, you know, it really starts out like most of our exploratory analyses, which is that we look for correlates of things like age and gender and friends groups. And then we sort of go about saying, like, how does this sort of cohere? It's really exploratory. And that stuff tends to be published in the computer-human interaction journals.
Yeah, so I guess I'm wondering, is this like a multivariate analysis, or do you just do like a series of correlations? Or do you do like some sort of multivariate analyses to pick up all these predictors at once?
This stuff was a whole bunch of regressions.
Okay.
There's a number of camps on regressions. Some say that you should throw everything into one regression. Some say that you should have regressions where the variables are potentially correlated. We spend a lot of time just like sort of reanalyzing this stuff ad infinitum, like, because as I said, this is an exploratory study, and then we say, this is what we saw, this is how we do it. So like the next steps are sort of asking the better questions and using a more scientifically rigorous approach to address this sort of stuff. So next paper that comes out on that topic, you should definitely read. Thanks.
I'd like to thank my collaborators. Is there any questions? We have oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if you were able to look at differences between the people who would seek out these images versus the people who would sort of see it and then ignore it.
We're actually looking at that right now. What we can tell you is that, first of all, males and young people are more likely to be using these forms of social media to seek out information about the disaster, about the marathon. But it looks as if individuals who were directly exposed are actually also looking at the graphic images more frequently. We're still trying to understand a little bit about that. We suspect that there's an age by gender interaction, but we just got these data, so we're not yet ready to say too much about them. Anything else?
Okay, I have a question.